When you live long enough, silence begins to speak. At 102 years old, in this old wooden house tucked into the soft hills of Virginia, I have learned that silence can be louder than any argument, heavier than any regret, and sharper than any truth. The floorboards creak the same way they did when my husband was alive. The wind still presses against the windows each winter night. The kettle still whistles every morning at 6:15 because my body refuses to sleep later than that. But there is one sound that never came: a phone ringing back. I have outlived my friends, my siblings, and even my own pride. Pride is a stubborn companion. It keeps you warm when you are young and freezes you when you are old. I was not always this calm woman speaking softly to you now. I was once quick with my words and quicker with my judgments. I believed strength meant never bending. I believed dignity meant never apologizing first. I believed if someone loved you enough, they would come back without being asked. I was wrong. It was 1978. I was 54 years old. My husband Thomas was still alive then. We were sitting at this very kitchen table when the phone rang. It was our daughter Evelyn. She was crying. I remember the way Thomas looked at me before I picked up the receiver. He always let me handle emotional storms. I had a way of sounding steady even when I was not. Evelyn told me she was moving across the country. California, a job opportunity, a new life. She said she needed space. She said she needed to find herself. I heard something else. I heard rejection. I heard abandonment. I heard that my years of sacrifice meant nothing. So I responded the way pride responds. I told her if she wanted to leave, she should go. I told her grown women make their own decisions. I told her not to expect me to chase her across America. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Mama, I just wanted you to say you'd miss me." But I didn't. I said, "You'll be fine." That was the beginning of a silence that lasted decades. Now understand something. We did speak again. Holidays, birthdays, short calls, polite conversations. But something tender had closed between us. There was a door neither of us wanted to open first. Thomas passed away in 1989. Heart attack, quick, brutal. The house became enormous overnight. Grief rearranges furniture inside your chest. It makes everything echo. Evelyn came for the funeral. She stood beside me, held my hand, and cried into my shoulder like she used to when she was small. For a moment, I almost said it. I almost said, "I'm sorry I made you feel like leaving was betrayal." But the words felt heavy, too late, too complicated, so I swallowed them. People think regret comes like a lightning bolt. It doesn't. It seeps in like cold air under a door you forgot to seal. Years passed. Evelyn built a life in California. She had 2 boys. My grandsons grew taller in photographs I kept on the mantel. I watched them age through glossy paper. I told myself it was fine. I told myself children drift. I told myself independence is healthy. But late at night, I would sit in Thomas's old chair and replay that phone call from 1978. I would imagine a different version of myself. One who said, "I will miss you every day." One who said, "Come back anytime." One who said, "No matter how far you go, this is still your home." It is strange how a single sentence can change the temperature of an entire relationship. In 2003, when I was 79, Evelyn stopped calling as often. Life got busy. Her boys were in college. She and her husband were traveling. I understood, of course. I had lived long enough to know that middle age is a crowded season. Still, I waited by the phone more than I care to admit. One evening, I picked it up myself. I dialed her number. My hands were steady, but my heart was not. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Voicemail. I hung up before the tone. That was the phone call I never made. You see, calling and speaking are different things. I dialed many times over the years, but I never left the message that mattered. I never said, I was proud and it cost us years. I never said, I needed you more than I let you know. I never said, forgive me. There is a dangerous myth about aging. People think wisdom automatically arrives with gray hair. It does not. Time gives you opportunities to learn, but pride can block every lesson. At 90, I began to feel time pressing closer. Friends from church passed away. My neighbor Margaret, who used to bring me peach cobbler every summer, was gone. The mailman changed 3 times. Seasons kept turning whether I was ready or not. I began writing letters I never sent. Pages and pages. I told Evelyn about her father's last words. I told her how scared I was the first winter after he died. I told her I kept the quilt she made in high school. I told her I had been afraid she would forget me. Fear dresses itself up as anger when we are younger. I was not angry that she left. I was afraid she would not come back. That is what I should have told her in 1978. Fear is honest. Pride is loud. In 2015, when I was 91, Evelyn called to tell me she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. I remember gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. In that moment, every old argument evaporated. All that remained was my child. I flew to California for the first time in my life. At 91, I was terrified of the plane, but not as terrified as I was of losing another person I loved without speaking truth. When I saw her in that hospital bed, smaller than I remembered, I felt time collapse. She looked at me and said, "You came." And I said, "Of course I did. You're my girl." For 3 weeks I sat beside her. I brushed her hair when it began to fall out. I held her hand during chemo. We talked about everything except the silence between us, until one night around 2 a.m., she woke up and whispered, "Mama, were you ever mad at me for leaving?" There it was, the door. My heart pounded like it had when I was 20. I could have said no. I could have smoothed it over. I could have protected my pride one last time. Instead, I told the truth. "I was scared," I said. "I thought if you left, you wouldn't need me anymore." And I didn't know how to say that. She cried. I cried. The machines beside her kept beeping like nothing historic was happening. She said, "I needed you to say you'd miss me." I nodded. I know. We did not solve everything that night. Real healing is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is 2 people choosing to stay in the room when it would be easier to leave. Evelyn survived. She is 76 now, strong, silver-haired like me. We speak every Sunday, not out of obligation, out of choice. But here is the part that matters most. The years we lost do not come back. Reconciliation is beautiful. It is sacred. But it does not rewind time. There were school plays I missed. Birthdays I attended only through mailed gifts. Tears she cried alone because she believed I disapproved of her independence. All because I would not make one honest phone call. Living alone at 102 gives you many hours to think. The house is patient with my memories. The rocking chair keeps rhythm with my reflections. I have learned that love must be spoken out loud. Assumptions are cruel architects. They build walls where doors were meant to be. If you are waiting for the other person to reach out first, understand this: they may be waiting too. If you believe staying silent protects your dignity, ask yourself what dignity costs when the other person is gone. If you think there is still time, remember that time does not negotiate. The phone on my kitchen wall is newer now, buttons instead of a rotary dial. But sometimes I stare at it and imagine my 54-year-old self standing here, jaw tight, heart guarded, convinced that strength meant withholding softness. Strength is not withholding. Strength is revealing. At 102, I can tell you this with certainty. Vulnerability feels risky in the moment, but regret lasts longer. I do not share this story because I am drowning in sorrow. I share it because I survived my own stubbornness. I share it because if even one person listening chooses to make the call they have been postponing, then these long Virginia evenings will have served a purpose. The world teaches us to win arguments. It rarely teaches us to protect connection. Connection is fragile. It requires maintenance. It requires humility. It requires the courage to say, I was wrong. I waited too long to say it. Do not misunderstand me. My life has been full. I loved deeply. I was loved in return. I raised a daughter who is resilient and compassionate. I have grandsons who call me Great-Grandma Clara, with laughter in their voices. But even a beautiful life can contain avoidable fractures. When I sit on my porch and watch the sun sink behind the trees, I think about how small our egos look from the distance of a century. The arguments that once felt enormous now seem like pebbles. The apologies I delayed now seem simple. Time shrinks drama and enlarges love. If there is someone in your life you have not called because you are waiting for the perfect moment, let me tell you something gently. The perfect moment is a myth. There is only now. I am 102 years old. My steps are slower. My hands tremble sometimes when I pour tea. But my mind is clear enough to see the shape of my life. And the shape of it tells me this: love bravely, speak honestly, and never assume people know what your silence is hiding. I live alone in this wooden house, but I am no longer alone in my heart. I finally made the call that mattered. I finally said the words pride kept locked away. Still, I often wonder how different the journey might have been if I had spoken sooner. Do not let pride narrate your relationships. It tells a lonely story. Let love speak instead.